Good evening. If you haven't already silenced your cell phones, if you wouldn't mind doing that, that'd be great. We are recording this, so it'll be on our website. Welcome. I'm Marjorie Mead, Interim Director of the Wade Center. We're delighted to have you here tonight, and it's a special opportunity for us to have a friend of the Wade Center, Dr. Mark Pike, here with us. He comes all the way from England, from the University of Leeds, and in fact flew in yesterday. So if he yawns a little tonight, you know he's being noble. This is definitely past his bedtime if he were home. And but we have the opportunity to have Mark here because he's on his way tomorrow, leaving to go to a conference where he'll be speaking at Harvard. So a special joy to have him here. Just a couple announcements before I introduce Mark officially. You might have seen on a little table in the lobby, there are these flyers and there's a little diorama. The Community School of the Arts, the end of January, is going to be doing a workshop based for various ages. You'll see the information. So if you have a young child who you think might enjoy that kind of craft project, you can get the information and sign up through them. It's not a Wade Center event, but obviously there's a connection in terms of the theme. Also this afternoon, we had the privilege of having Mark speak to us on his book, Mere Education, and that also was recorded and will be on our website, but the publisher was sending, and they haven't arrived yet, some cards that would allow you to have a 20% discount on that, and it's Lewis's view of education and how that might and should impact how we view our own teaching and the issues that we're dealing with today. So if you're interested in that, check back with the Wade Center. We may be able to put information on our website as well if you'd like a discount on that volume. But Mark is Professor of Education and Head of the School of Education at the University of Leeds. But most relevant for us tonight, he's Director of the Narnian Virtues Character Education Research Project that's funded by the John Templeton Foundation. And in this regard, Mark's research for the Templeton Project examines how young people can learn 6 virtues: wisdom, love, justice, integrity, self-control, and fortitude. And all of this coming as they read and respond to the Narnia novels, and in particular the study is going to focus on 3 of them. This evening, Mark will be sharing more with us about the ways in which the Narnia Project can demonstrate how parents as well as school teachers can give these values and inculcate them in children as a way of forming good character. And there are also ways that you can be involved that are very exciting, and you certainly can share these with your friends. So I will turn it over to Dr. Mark Pike, and please join me in welcoming him.
Well, thank you for having me here, and thank you, Marge, and thank you, Andy, and Laura for superb hospitality and stimulating conversation, and it feels like being at home when I'm here at the Wade. The last time I was here with my daughter, who's now 14. I think she was 10 when I was here last, researching the book Mere Education. So it's super to be here, and thank you so much for having me. What I'm going to do, you're going to be the guinea pigs tonight, okay? So I'm going to put you through your paces, and you're going to have to do what some of the 11, 12, and 13-year-olds are going to have to do. That means we're going to look at a passage from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and what the children have to do is they have to spot the virtue and the vice being demonstrated in the passage. Okay, so we're going to be looking at some passages, but first of all I'll tell you something about the project, and then we will look at this curriculum. we are tremendously grateful to the John Templeton Foundation, who are funding the project. We found out in the summer they're funding the project to the tune of £1.1 million, which enables us to work with a significant number of schools and a significant number of young people in terms of cultivating good character and the virtues underpinning good character through response to 3 of the Narnian novels. So we are deeply grateful to them, and I'll tell you the story of how this happened in just a moment, but we will start with Lewis. We learn the rule of decent behaviour from parents and teachers and friends and books, which may sound tremendously simple, but where you learn good character is identified here by C.S. Lewis in The Abolition of Man from parents and teachers and friends and books. But while we might say, for instance, that parents are very influential upon their children's character development, there is very little evidence that shows that, and there's very little evidence in terms of empirical studies that show how it happens, how children learn good character from parents and teachers and friends and books. So I would like to extend to you an invitation. If you're a teacher, if you're a parent of an 11, 12 or 13-year-old, or a to-be 11, 12 or 13-year-old, or if you are working in a school or leading a school, working with that age range, I would like to invite you to participate, and it's free. The commitment is to administer the pre-test and the post-test that we send out so that we can see what children have learned, but you are cordially invited to participate. And it's an international study, so, you know, schools from the US, schools from here, as well as schools in the Netherlands, schools in the UK, schools in Australia, the more the merrier. Another Lewis quotation to focus our minds. Right actions done for the wrong reasons do not help to build the internal quality of character called a virtue. And it is this quality of character that really matters. So here we have Lewis talking about character, talking about virtue, and, more to the point, talking about the motivation for action. Not just the action, but the motivation for the action. That's in Mere Christianity. It sounds awfully like character education, doesn't it? And I think if you read the first part of The Abolition of Man, Men Without Chests, you'll see that there Lewis is advocating the teaching of good character. The chest for Lewis is the seat of character, and he gives a depiction of what a graduate of the English schooling system in his day looked like, with a enormous head and a shrunken chest. He says the chest, the seat of character, is atrophied, it's wasted away through lack of exercise. He says it's not that we have educated the head too much. It is that we have educated the character too little. So please let there be no misunderstanding. He's not suggesting that we educate the brain, the mind, the head too much. You know, he was an Oxford and a Cambridge Don. That was his bread and butter, you know, educating the head. But when he looked at the graduates of the schooling system who came up to him at Oxford after the secondary school phase of their education, he thought that he perceived an atrophy of the chest, that the chest was wasting away, that this was not character education that was manifested, that was displayed in the young people that came up to him. Okay, so this is overtly a character education curriculum. It's a character education curriculum research project. It's drawing upon, focused on, 3 of the Narnia novels by C.S. Lewis and 6 virtues. We started with 12, and then the reviewers suggested that because we were reading the novel over 12 weeks, that 12 was a bit ambitious, and that if we focused on 6 virtues, that it would allow for reinforcement, because there would be 2 weeks, not necessarily consecutive weeks, but there would be 2 weeks devoted to each virtue, if we had 12 weeks and 6 virtues. And the 6 virtues are wisdom, love, justice, integrity, fortitude, and self-control. Okay, I think I should just define those the way we define them for the young people. If you'll bear with me for just a moment. Wisdom, we say, includes prudence. It's the habit of exercising good judgment, discerning what is true and good, and choosing the best course of action. We need courage to change what we can, patience to endure what we cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. We've included, this is a crafty dodge because we were told to whittle them down to 6. So our crafty dodge is to include curiosity, which was one of our 12, within wisdom, because we say that curiosity is the mark of an active mind, and it is wise to be curious about the right sort of things. So that's wisdom, including prudence. The second one, love. The habit of acting. Now, I should just say, the habit. Now, that's significant because these are settled dispositions. These are not one-off actions. So when we say Julie is kind, or we say Andy is honest, or we say Marge is self-controlled, or Marge has fortitude, we're really saying that this is who they are, that these aren't one-off occurrences, that this is part of who they are. And it doesn't mean to say that in a particularly trying moment, they won't have the odd lapse. We are human. But we're saying that, by and large, most of the time, Julie is a kind person. Okay? So these are settled dispositions. So love, the habit of acting selflessly for the good of another without seeking recognition or reward, putting the interests of others ahead of our own, willingness to sacrifice for the sake of another, doing good for others by being kind, caring, generous, and loyal. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for another. Second crafty dodge, we're including in love forgiveness. So forgiveness gets included in love. The habit of letting go of anger or resentment towards others who have caused us harm or injury. Forgiveness. And also, we're including gratitude in love, feeling and expressing thanks. Gratitude leads us to count our blessings. I'll speed up a bit because I really only want to talk for about half an hour and then have a good discussion and any questions that you have. And I want to leave some time for you to be the guinea pigs also, to actually do what the children have to do. So I must speed up. So integrity, we include in that honesty. As a leader with integrity, she listened to the voice of conscience, not the voice of the crowd, being honest with oneself and honest with others. Fortitude, the habit of doing what is right in the face of difficulty, mental and emotional strength. Now, class, you are going to need to remember this for one of the passages that you are going to look at in just a moment. So fortitude, overcoming obstacles, enduring suffering, courage, patience, perseverance, resilience when faced with challenging circumstances. Fortitude, courage, standing up for what's right, moral courage, standing up for what's right when it is unpopular to do so. Self-control, the habit of self-restraint, moderation of desires, emotions, impulses, and appetites, resisting temptation, delaying gratification in order to achieve a higher goal. In the absence of self-control, our desires control us. And justice, the habit of treating everyone with equal respect and fairness, fulfilling responsibilities, taking responsibility for our actions. Now, I mentioned just at the start, I think, that we pre- and post-test the children before and after the 12 weeks. So one of the things that we pre- and post-test them on is, do you know how to define and explain and apply these virtues? So their virtue literacy is one of the things being tested. We've actually found in the pilot that some children and young people are unfamiliar even with terms such as vice and virtue. That virtue is quite an old-fashioned word, that it's not used quite as much as we might expect, some of us, by 11, 12 and 13-year-olds. And in our pilot we saw, which we just did in 5 schools, 5 quite large schools, we found dramatic gains in their virtue literacy. And of course this is delivered through English literature. It's delivered through that core area of the curriculum, and one of the main focuses in English literature is character. Whether you're doing English literature as an 11-year-old or whether you're doing English literature for your degree at Leeds University or at Wheaton College, you are going to spend a lot of time, one way or another, analysing character. And if you have words like fortitude as part of your vocabulary and, the associated semantic field, fortitude, clearly your character analysis is going to come on in leaps and bounds. So, we are exhorted in 2 Peter, add to your faith virtue. And apologies for the misspelling of Galatians, but Galatians 5, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, fruit of the Spirit. Just at the end of last year, 2015, the Church of England, I was at the launch at Church House in London, they launched a report entitled Fruits of the Spirit for all of the Church of England schools in the UK, and they referred to the Narnian Virtues project, and they were talking about fruit of the Spirit needing some human tending, that it isn't just produced by trees on their own, that even fruit trees need some pruning and human tending. So we believe good character is for everyone, not just for Christians. or for Christian schools, a little bit like, marriage is for is a good for everyone. So whether in secular schools or whether in Christian schools, for a wide range of children from different families and communities. But there will obviously be a very high degree of synergy and congruence between a curriculum designed to foster virtue based on the works of C.S. Lewis and the mission of many Christian schools and homes. And I think at that point we should probably move on. I'll just tell you the story of how this got started. So Tom Licona is my co-investigator at the State University of New York. His Centre for the 4th and 5th R's, Respect and Responsibility, and his work as a character educator, really as the father of character education over the last 20, 30 years. That's been featured. That was on the front of the New York Times magazine a few years ago. And Thomas Licona is a big name in character education. And character education is really just beginning to supersede what's been known as citizenship education in the UK. So the personal moral development of children is coming in, is supported by both political parties, right and left of the political spectrum. Before that, we had citizenship education, which was all about promoting voting, because there was low voter turnout among 18 to 24-year-olds. And Tom has written Character Matters in 2004, this one Raising Good Children from Birth Through the Teenage Years. And I met Tom at a conference and kept in touch with him, and then said to him, look, why don't we put some of your work on character education together with C.S. Lewis and some of the work that I've done on moral education through response to literature. This one came out in 2015, and this one in 2013. I must introduce you to Jeremy, to the Pikelets. This is Jeremy Pike, who's now aged 11. This is Lydia Pike, who's now aged 14. And this is Luke Pike, who is 16, but he's going to be 17 in January. And my wife, Babs, declined to be on the front cover. And the rest of them are their friends. So they got to have their friends on the front cover. And Mere Education is really about how Lewis's work is relevant to schooling and education today. So lots of the books on Lewis and education are about his education, how he hated boarding school, Malvern College, the Oxford, how he benefited from the Oxford tutorial system. So it's quite biographical. But what I did here in Mere Education was to go through 30 plus books, his ethics, his theology, his fiction, and say, look, we can discern here a clear, not just a clear philosophy of education, but we can discern here key applications. And I just wanted to make this accessible to teachers and school leaders and parents. So Lewis, writes about assessment and marking and feedback and grading of students' work. He writes about excellence. He writes about, not dumbing down. He writes about the liberal arts in education. He writes about a whole host of matters, sex and relationships education. And what I wanted to do there was just to put it in one volume for teachers and parents who, because Lewis's work on education and schooling isn't in one place. People talk about The Abolition of Man as Lewis's book on education, but it's only about 60 pages, and it's pretty dense for 21st century readers, and a lot of it is, you find some of it at the start of The Silver Chair. I don't know if you can remember the start of The Silver Chair, but Lewis satirises Experiment House, which is a mixed school for boys and girls, but not so mixed as the minds of the people that ran it. not so mixed as the minds of the people that ran it. And he talks about the behaviour system and the discipline system, and that, you know, if you were a bully, you became more of a favourite with the head teacher than otherwise, and you simply sort of got lots more attention, and nothing was done to stop this. So there's quite a lot in all sorts of places. There's a lot about leadership in the Ransom trilogy. The leader of St. Anne's in That Hideous Strength, Ransom. So really a lot of lessons for leaders, for school leaders, and leaders more generally. Okay, so the invitation is at no cost apart from 2 to 3 hours of your life, administering the pre to post test. You receive the curriculum, and the pedagogy is really simple. Annotation to application. You'll see what that means in a moment. So annotation means that in the first lesson of each week, that the children annotate a passage from The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe in terms of the vices or virtues that they see exhibited by the characters. Okay, and they have a pack. They have 2 highlighter pens, and I was giving this presentation to a couple of hundred teachers in the Netherlands, and I said, now you highlight the vices in orange, and there was this collective intake of breath from all of the assembled teachers, and I thought, what have I done? And they said, you can't use our national colour for vice. So orange in the revised version has become red. So we've just gone for red and green, which won't work for other nations in this international thing. But red for vice and green for virtue. So they annotate the virtue, they annotate the vice, and then application, the second lesson of the week, or the second thing that they do, is to apply that virtue to themselves. So for instance, they'll look at Edmund having a lack of self-control with regard to the enchanted Turkish delight. And then they'll say, so that'll be the first part, the application, and then they'll say, how does that apply to me? How does that apply to me? What do I need to exercise more self-control over? And at the end of the pilot, when we interviewed the children, very, very interesting findings. One girl, when she was interviewed, she said, I feel obliged to be available and online at all times of the day and night via my smartphone. And I'm not getting enough sleep, and I'm getting grumpy, and I had to go to my mum, and my mum had to limit my use at bedtime and take the phone off me so that I could actually have a balanced life and get enough sleep and not be socially available at all hours of the day and night. So we're very much focused on application. We want to work with parents and families as well as teachers and schools. And we'd like to do some case studies of teachers and schools and parents and families here and in the Netherlands and in Australia. And so if you would like to be involved, please let us know, and we would like to do case studies of how you work with young people. Moving on swiftly, it's 12 weeks in the autumn term. So in the autumn term of the first year, 12 weeks between September and December, the students read The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Over 12 weeks, there are 12 passages, 12 extracts, and 6 virtues. I've said that. And it's 2 hours per week in class. But then there's a home task with parents. So you know that when children go to secondary school, I suppose you would say high school, there's this tendency for parents to retreat and, leave the schooling, leave the education to the professionals. Well, we wanted parents to work with teachers, and so the home tasks deliberately involve parents and engage parents in what the children have to do. I'll say a little bit more about that in just a moment. It's with 11, 12, 13-year-olds, and it goes up until 2019. Right, are you ready? Here we go, first passage. For the next few days, she, Lucy, was very miserable. She could have made it up with the others quite easily at any moment if she could have brought herself to say that the whole thing was only a story made up for fun. But Lucy was a very truthful girl, and she knew that she was really in the right, and she could not bring herself to say this. And so, they highlight in green the virtue, which is integrity. There's also fortitude in there. Often it's a blend. It's, you don't separate them out. But we lead on integrity because of Lucy was a very truthful girl. And this is where she's facing peer pressure, so that's clearly fortitude being demonstrated as well, to just pretend that Narnia does not exist and that she has made it up. But she sticks to her guns. She has real resilience. She's honest with herself. She's honest with others. That is integrity. By contrast, however, Edmund could be spiteful, and on this occasion he was spiteful. He sneered and jeered at Lucy and kept on asking her if she'd found any other new countries in other cupboards all over the house. What made it worse was that these days ought to have been delightful. The weather was fine, and they were out of doors from morning to night, bathing, fishing, climbing trees, and lying in the heather. But Lucy could not properly enjoy any of it, and so things went on until the next wet day. And not in orange, but in red, so we don't offend the Dutch, we have the vice, Edmund being spiteful. Edmund being spiteful. Okay, and if you recall, I was talking about annotation to start with, and then putting it into practice. So, extract 1, this is the top half of the page. The next slide is the bottom half of the page in their student workbook. So, extract 1, Lucy was very miserable. Integrity, and the annotation is here on the right. Integrity is the focus virtue here. We immediately see Lucy's honesty. Lucy was a very truthful girl. She is true to herself. It's her integrity that enables her to endure and to show fortitude. Being truthful and honest is habitual for Lucy. It is the kind of person she is. She is indeed a very truthful girl. Edmund's spitefulness demonstrates his lack of the virtue of love. And then there's a bridge, so we have a little sort of beginning of applying it to themselves. I'm like or I'm not like Lucy. I'm honest or I'm not honest about when. I stand up or I don't stand up for the truth when. So there's a little bit of application. But then the second lesson is more full-on application of, do I have integrity? Do I show self-control? Right. Okay. And then there are notes for teachers, what integrity is and why it's important. More notes for teachers, to thine own self be true. More notes for teachers, teaching the children about integrity in relation to this passage. Okay. Right, would you like to do one yourselves then? Don't all rush at once. So, I get to be an English teacher again. I was a high school English teacher for 10 years. You can see that I miss it. being a researcher in a university. It's just an excuse to be an English teacher again. Right, so you've got to figure out, if you're armed with your highlighter pen, your red and your green highlighter pen, what would you be highlighting? Here. Edmund thought only of trying to shovel down as much Turkish delight as he could, and the more he ate, the more he wanted to eat. At last, the Turkish delight was all finished, and Edmund was looking very hard at the empty box and wishing that she, the White Witch, would ask him whether he would like some more. This was enchanted Turkish delight. Anyone who had once tasted it would want more and more of it, and would even, if they were allowed, go on eating till they had killed themselves. Right, what would you pick out if you were 11 years old with your red highlighter pen? Or indeed, if you're here tonight and you are around that age, what might you be highlighting? Oh, by the way, the highlighter pens are one of the most memorable parts of this project because they have an eraser at the end that rubs out highlighting. Discovered by Lydia Pike, who said, "Dad, you've got to get these for your project. You can actually rub out the highlighting." So, what would you highlight?
Well, the first 2.5 lines are pretty obvious: absence of self-control.
Yeah. Good. I mean, there's going to be a lot of red on this page. I think that's safe to say. So let's have a look. You could get carried away with your red pen, couldn't you? Your red highlighter pen there. Okay. His unwillingness to regulate his appetites. It's highly addictive. He shovels down as much as he can get, loses inhibition, throws caution to the wind. Sounds familiar? Everything now seems to revolve around his desire for, or addiction to, this enchanted Turkish delight. And one of the home tasks, one of the home tasks that when they've forgotten everything else, they remember this, okay, is they say to their parents and to their siblings at home, "What is your Turkish delight?" Okay, and they go around. And my 11-year-old, who's part of the project, accosted me at breakfast time. "What's your Turkish delight then, Dad?" Which, of course, requires some honesty on the part of the parent, because we are all a work in progress, don't we know? And we're all working on our character, adults as well as children, and sharing that is important for children to see, that we are not the finished product, that we are not infallible. Right. And then the teachers do some teaching. Moderation of desires, gratification. You get the idea. Yeah? Resisting temptation. But it's anchored in the passage. Let's do another one. It was not surprising that when they found Lucy a good deal later, everyone could see that she had been crying. Nothing they could say to her made any difference. She stuck to her story and said, "I don't care what you think, and I don't care what you say. You can tell the professor, or you can write to Mother, or you can do anything you like. I know I've met a fawn in there, and I wish I'd stayed there. And you were all beasts. So apart from the last bit, there's a fair bit of virtue demonstrated there. Any suggestions? What you would be highlighting and what you would be writing in the right-hand margin, what you would be saying about the annotation. See, it's just got harder, but not that much harder. You can rise to the challenge, I'm sure. Be doing that teacherly thing and picking on people in a moment. but obviously only the people I know that I've just been out to dinner with. No pressure, chaps.
And there used to be a Marine that you can be. Oh no.
The guy that was a Marine for 20 years?
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So, we'll spare the Marine. She stuck to her story and said, I don't care what you think. So, what might we be saying about that? What might we be saying about that? So this
Fortitude in there.
yeah. Fortitude, integrity.
Real courage. She can get in trouble and she doesn't care.
Yep, absolutely. And what I like about it is it really makes it specific and anchors it. So, you know, and also we're not taking the approach where you come into the classroom and you say, okay, children, we're doing integrity this week. You know, the next week, okay, children, we're doing self-control this week. We're deliberately avoiding that. And we're saying, aha, here is a passage. Sure, you know that we're focusing this term, this autumn term, fall term, on these 6 virtues. We've been through these virtues with you. You know the definitions of these 6 virtues. But look at this passage. Now, over to you. What do you think this demonstrates? So we're not kind of giving them the answers. They're having to actually think. So we are propelling them into mental and moral activity. Okay. Fortitude. The suffering, she endures the suffering and bullying of Edmund. She endures the disbelief of Peter and Susan. So these are the teacher's notes. The teachers can elicit this from the young people. She shows grit and resilience. Refusal to bow to peer pressure, to change her story, to say what people want to hear. It's all the more remarkable because she's the youngest. We would agree, wouldn't we? Okay. And then there are the home tasks. Now, we haven't called this homework. Am I using a British term, homework? You have homework too. Okay. All right. Okay. So we have a character passport. Now, the idea of, which does actually look more like your passport than my passport.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. In 2 years' time, my wife will be a member of the EU and I will not, because she's German and I'm English. So, anyway, I digress. So, it's a character passport. The notion is that you get it stamped if you visit a virtue. So it doesn't mean to say you've attained this virtue, but it does mean to say that you have reflected seriously upon this virtue, that you've done some work in relation to the novel on the virtue, and you've done something at home, you've practiced it. This is all a bit neo-Aristotelian. So Aristotle in Nicomachean Ethics says, you know, how do you become a better harp player? By playing the harp. Yeah? You know, how do I become... Aristotle did not talk about tennis players. Lewis talks about a tennis player. You know, how do you become a better tennis player? By playing tennis. My wife likes this next one. I need more patience. She knows I need more patience. How do I get more patience? Regrettably, by being in situations that place demands upon my patience. How do I become more courageous? By doing courageous acts. Deep breath, best foot forwards, step out of my comfort zone, do what needs to be done rather than is the easy thing. This is true, isn't it, of all of us. So it's like young Lydia Pike's piano practice. How do you become better at playing the piano? By playing the piano. But the key is obviously to practice playing the piano. Okay, so the the home tasks. They choose 2 target virtues that they will work on. This is the last slide, by the way. 2 target virtues to work on for the whole 12 weeks. And the parents choose 3. So each parent 1 chooses 3, parent 2 chooses 3. The child then chooses 2. So the parent says, well, actually, these 3 are what I think you should be working on. Other parent says, these 3 are what I think. And then the child can ignore the parents completely and choose 2 different ones. Or they can be diplomatic and choose 1 from each parent. Or they can actually have a dialogue about it, which is what we really want to happen. We want the parents and the child sitting down and thinking which 2 virtues. What is your Turkish delight, which should have a question mark? They create a box of Turkish delight, and they put cards inside it, and each member of the family writes down on the card what they will be working on. Okay? So my targets are in my 11-year-old son's Turkish delight box, as is his mother's, as is his elder siblings. Create a family mission statement, hold a weekly family meeting, watch and discuss the movie, the family meal, a gratitude journal, and these are deliberately to be done at home, because the whole notion here is that you learn by doing, you learn by applying, you learn by practice. And in the pilot, nearly all of the character building examples that the children gave us were not school-based. They were home-based. They were to do with siblings, they were to do with sharing, they were to do with life at home, life after school, life at the weekends. Now, whether that's because home is a less regulated environment and school is quite highly regulated, I don't know. But the examples that the children were giving us were all based on home, largely. So therefore, if you're going to practice virtue, you're going to practice it in school and you're going to practice it outside of school. I said that was the last slide, didn't I? I hope I'm right. Well, I was almost right. If you want to email us, Narnian Virtues, but questions, invitation to participate, you get the curriculum, and there's no charge for that. Ooh, while I'm talking about no charge, Marge, Mere Education, 2 chapters are available as a free download from the Lutterworth website. So Lutterworth, the Lutterworth Press, Cambridge, UK, and there are 12 chapters, but 2 of them, including chapter 1 on character education, is available as a free download, so you don't have to pay $28, including your 20% discount for the book, if you want the chapter on character education. Questions? Over to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening. But let's make the most of the next 10 minutes. Questions or comments? Comments are always good. Much easier for the speaker to deal with, of course, comments than questions. So comments, questions. Don't all rush at once. Hello.
I'm curious, I get intuitively how the novel imparts this idea of virtue.
Yeah.
What other ways do you educate young people on or character education other than using stories?
Oh, okay. So, I mean, this is Tom Lacona's kind of whole field. So you can do character education. I was going to say in the bus queue, but you don't have queues, do you? Q-U-E-U-E. You have lines. I learnt this the hard way. Queue up. Nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. Okay. You can do it in the corridors. You can do it in the classrooms. You can do it through, a school behaviour system. Lots and lots and lots of ways of. This is admittedly only one way of doing character education. You can do character education. We were talking about this over dinner. You can do character education on the playing fields of Eton, through sport. There's that phrase, the playing fields of Eton, and then, they went off to be officers, didn't they, in the British Empire? And, perhaps that's why, there's some nervousness or distancing with regard to character education as soon as notions of colonialism and empire come in. But certainly through sport, through sport, we would say that, that's a character developing, character building experience. So yes, no, through literature is only one way. But what I would say is this. Lewis says that every act of justice involves putting yourself in somebody else's place. Right, so I'm now going to do my pitch for literature, okay? It's not just about developing the skill, it's about developing the will. And the remarkable thing to me about literature is that it enables children to enter secondary worlds. It enables them to empathise. It develops the will as well as the skill. By stepping into somebody else's shoes and walking around in them, they actually get to see the world from another person's point of view. So I think that it is one of the prime ways, and this is theorised and developed, as you would expect, more fully. But Lewis says in the book, Lewis says that every act of justice and mercy involves putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And of course that's what happens. When we read a novel, we identify with particular characters. You identify with Lucy, you identify with Edmund. You say, yes, I've been like that at certain times. So I'm, unashamedly making the pitch for character education through literature. But you can do it in the bus queue or line. Yeah. Hello.
Is this curriculum able to reach out to the larger nation of the British Isles and people, or is it just exclusively in the parochial schools?
No, it's for everyone. Yeah. And we're not going to reach the whole school population. Downstream, we want the plan is to reach 25,000 children from schools that have a Christian foundation and from community schools and comprehensives that don't have any denominational affiliation at all. So it's for Anglican schools, for Catholic schools, for independent Christian schools. We've had Muslim children doing this curriculum, and during the month of Ramadan, actually writing all about self-control and fasting, and having quite a perceptive understanding about self-control, when they are not eating between dawn and dusk. So yes, we've done this in multicultural schools. So
it's not as if it's a national curriculum?
No. I would be getting sort of delusions of grandeur and ideas above my station. Would that would be the case. Character education is coming in the UK. Reactions are somewhat polarised. Some schools are very, very keen on doing this. Other schools just, don't want to do something that's by a Christian author. They'd rather do J.K. Rowling or, other authors. But in fact, in character education, so in character education through literature, Lewis was neglected. So very, very little has been done on character education through literature through Lewis, remarkably. There's lots of work on, rehabilitation of young offenders using different extracts, different, scenarios, fiction. But what's so powerful about Lewis and Narnia is the moral universe that's depicted, actions have the right consequences. Whereas in some other works, actions don't have the right consequences in terms of the moral direction in which the work inclines. So, you can have some novels where, you do all the wrong things and the baddies win, put really simply. So here, we have quite a rich, nuanced approach. We see what Edmund goes through. In The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, we see the undragoning of Eustace, don't we? Yeah. So the moral universe of Narnia is very powerful as far as character and moral education is concerned, because it is built on the right foundations. And essentially it teaches the values of the Tao as defined in the 8 laws and the appendix to the Abolition of Man. So it actually illustrates those. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? And if, it might not be you, but you might know a teacher or a family that, please tell them, and it would be great that if they were participating, if they wanted to.
So, to re-expose character education, does that imply that at one time this was part of a general curriculum that was taught or trying
to
expose the children, where now we're bringing it back?
Yes, there is a resurgence in policy, in education policy, a resurgence in education policy in terms of character education.
And so how was it done previously?
So I think previously, apart from, the elite public, by which I mean private schools like Eton and Marlborough and those sorts of schools, apart from those, I suppose it's always been there in that by commission or omission, you can't not teach character in a school as a teacher. But the explicit emphasis on particular virtues, I think was eroded with the professionalisation of teachers and the professionalisation of teaching, and also the rise of secularisation and the teachers retreating and schools retreating to where they say, I'm going to teach some maths, I'm going to teach some English. I can't tell a child how to live because the children in front of me come from so many different communities and so many different faiths and so many different groups and have such a diversity of parenting that I'm just going to stick to maths, I'm just going to stick to English, I'm just going to stick to whatever curriculum area there is, rather than having the audacity, the temerity to seek to tell a child how to live. But of course the big mistake there is that we can't not, as teachers, we can't not, as parents, we can't not teach character. It goes on anyway. So when I say a resurgence, what I mean is a resurgence in neo-Aristotelian virtue ethics applied to education, funding centres being set up, teachers thinking about particular virtues. When I go around schools in the north of England, schools often use the term values rather than virtues, but you'll see all over the visual culture of the school, honesty, self-discipline, honourable purpose, self-control. And that kind of values-driven, values-led schooling ethos seems to be on the rise. I'll just tell you a little anecdote to finish. So one of the schools that I work with has all of these values, these core values as part of its visual culture. It's a state-funded school, but it has a Christian ethos and a Christian foundation. And I did a case study of this school and wrote it up in the Oxford Review of Education, because it was the most improved academy, the most improved secondary school in the country. I think here at one time prisons could be kind of handed over to a Christian organisation to run. I think some free schools are, run by different organisations. So in the UK, this particular school, the government was so desperate, the local authority was so desperate, because they had to be really desperate to give it to a Christian organisation, of course. Apart from the fact that the church ran all the schools until the Forster Act of 1870, but anyway, they've forgotten about that. So the most improved academy in England, and the Christian organisation took over the school, new management, core values. I was following the head teacher around, and the catchment area, the population, the pupil population, student population, is pretty much entirely secular, unchurched, modern pagan Britain. And I was following the head teacher around, and a 13-year-old girl, he was doing an any questions, and she put up her hand. Where did the school core values come from, sir? Where did the school's core values come from? And without being at all defensive, he said, from the life, work, teaching and ministry of Jesus Christ. We wanted our school to look like the best person. We thought, who is the best person who has ever lived? Jesus Christ. We wanted to model our school on the life, work, teaching, ministry of Jesus Christ. And the story has sort of not such a good ending, in that I went to present this at a conference, and the abstract, the paragraph that you give them before you speak at the conference, had been changed. I'd written down, study of a Christian foundation, Christian ethos school, and explained that, Christian organisation was running the school. And it had been, this was in Washington, D.C., and they were a non-partisan organisation. I learned what non-partisan meant, you see. And I thought, this is quite interesting, non-partisan. And it was the first time I'd ever had, it's the only time I've ever had an abstract changed. And they kind of airbrushed out Christian, and they said, this faith-based school, or this, they either used the word faith or religious. They couldn't use the word Christian. So I started my paper at the conference by saying, well, just to be intellectually honest and accurate to the data, to the empirical data in the case study that's been done, this is a Christian foundation school because the source of the core values are the life, work, teaching and ministry of Jesus Christ, not Muhammad, not the Buddha, not any other religious leader, but Jesus Christ. That's the way it is. So you can imagine how that went down. Any questions? Or shall we pick up the conversation informally?
I had one maybe last.
Andy?
I wonder if you had an example at all of justice.
Justice?
Yeah. I just go on the PowerPoint. I just think about that because obviously there's some, you gave definitions, but I think justice, particularly
It's important.
in our society, it is, but it's also, we have different ideas about what is just, right? So,
Yeah.
There's one where I think that eating all the candy and getting sick.
Yeah.
Right? So that's obviously like, well, that's justice, right?
Hmm.
That's sort of cause and effect, what is that justice,
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you did. If you don't, no problem. But
No, we do, because we have two passages for each virtue, and one of the two passages for the virtue of justice is Mr. Tumnus's house being ransacked by the secret police of the White Witch. So if you can remember in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, the door is hanging off, the place has been trashed, the glass in the frame of the fawn's late father, has been broken. His belongings have been strewn across the floor. Things have been slashed. And clearly he has been the victim of arbitrary arrest without trial. And, we talk with the children about living in a free society and being, that a lot of places in the world, the police, the state, can do things like that. But that our homes, in America, in England, how would we feel if the front door was ripped off and all of our possessions were strewn over the floor, and that this is not treating people with an equality of respect? We also look at the sibling rivalry between Peter and Edmund, and the way that Peter has to admit before Aslan that he's been harsh on his younger brother, and that being too harsh on his younger brother, being essentially unfair, helped him go wrong, was part of the cause of him going wrong. So we do have that kind of owning up, taking responsibility, that people need to be treated fairly, that it can't always be Peter having his way and giving out the orders, as the older brother. But what's interesting, Andy, is that the children are kind of given that lead, that cue, that prompt, and then they come up with examples of injustice. And for me, the whole tenor of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe is that this family, the Pevensies, they begin by caring about themselves. They just want to get back to Finchley. They want to rescue their brother. So in terms of the Tao and the appendix to the abolition of man, it's just them and theirs and their family. So they want to rescue their brother Edmund from the White Witch, and they want to get back to England. And that's it. And they move from self-protection, wanting to look after a sibling, from that to wanting to free the land from tyranny, to rid the land of oppression, to depose the White Witch, to bring in spring and summer, to rid the land of winter, and to stop the kind of injustices meted out on the Fawn Tumnus, where his home is ransacked, happening. And so that kind of, from just looking after ourselves and our family to wanting justice and liberty for the whole society, for the whole land of Narnia, is, I think, a powerful driver there. Yeah, but thank you for that point. Hi.
You highlighted the 6 virtues. Were you able
Yes.
to touch on the other 6 virtues in the context of those other 6 virtues, or were there any you left out in your discussion today?
Yeah, I left out quite a few.
Right, I know, but you still were telling us how under justice and under
Yeah.
you were able to sneak in the other virtues. So
I did some more sneaking. And I can admit to the crafty dodge.
the curriculum notes, or did the other 6 get touched upon? But just not-
Yeah, we've kind of covered all 12, but we've said it's 6. But we're still honest. Just flexible. Yeah. Oh, I have it here, and I will tell you. So, right. Yes, okay. So we've included diligence and hard work under self-control. Okay? Because if you're self-controlled, if you have discipline, if you have self-discipline, we think that will involve, doing your homework, work before play. That will involve hard work and diligence. We've included courage as an aspect of fortitude. We've included humility within integrity. So if we say that integrity is being honest with yourself, because human beings have this extraordinary propensity for self-deception, So being honest with yourself is really important, not just honest with others. So within integrity, we've included humility, because when we talk about being honest with oneself, that's the habit of being aware of one's strengths and shortcomings, admitting and correcting flaws and failures, being free from pride and arrogance. So we've kind of, woven that seamlessly in there. But it's all available, and all the notes are available, and you can get them online from this month, really, from December, and then you can trial it, you can practice it in a school or in a family, and then participate in the trial starting in September. So you can kind of work with the materials. But if you know other head teachers, head teacher in China family, then if friends of ours work at a school in Cambodia, it would be great. Oh, and one of the most exciting parts of the project, Marge edited that book, Letters to Children, where about 100 of the letters of C.S. Lewis, he replied to every single letter that every child wrote to him in this huge mailbag. But the letters that the children wrote to Lewis have been lost or destroyed or burned. So we just have Lewis's replies to the children. We don't have the children's letters to Lewis. So at the end of the project, after learning about the virtues, applying it to their own character, we are inviting the students to write their own letters to Lewis, imagining that he's still alive and sitting in Magdalen College, churning out one Narnia book after another, waiting for, the sequel. And Marge has kindly agreed to co-edit our letters to Lewis, which we're quite excited about. And we're kind of wondering what they're going to write, aren't we? So yes, we would like to publish these children's letters to Lewis. So if you participate in this, you can write the letter. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. This was a delight, and it's always a joy to have you here. And I hope you do pass the word to people that you think might be involved. Even we know we have a lot of people here with connections with overseas schools and people who are homeschooling and so on. So it's a great way for people to find a way to work productively with the wonder of the Narnia books. So thank you for coming, and please feel free to come and ask Mark questions personally. So have a good evening.